Myrvold, In-Formation. Welcome to Rogaland Art Museum and to the exhibition called In-Formation. This presents a representative selection from Pia Myrvold's widely diverse artistic production. Myrvold was born in Stavanger in 1960. Her career started in the early 80s when she, as a self-taught artist, distinguished herself in her hometown of Stavanger. She made her debut at 20 years old at the regional exhibition called Vestlandsutstillingen, and in 1983 held her first solo exhibition at Rogaland Art Museum. Early on, Myrvold formed an artistic partnership with Randy Naylor, and throughout the 80s they carried out a number of exciting projects in the Stavanger region. During this time, Myrvold and Naylor operated under the group name Art Attack. In 1991, the duo moved to Paris and eventually achieved a breakthrough, garnering positive acclaim for their ideas, not least through an ambitious textile project for the Swiss architect Bernard Tschumi. This work was exhibited in Tschumi's postmodern masterpiece, Parc de la Villette in Paris, and in many respects, this was the start of their international career throughout the 90s. In-Formation is an exhibition focusing on the multi-talented Pia Myrvold. Many of her works are multimedial. In other words, they transcend the boundaries of traditional artistic genre. This boundary crossing concerns not only Myrvold's work within the delimited phenomenon of art, but also her exploration of areas traditionally outside the art world, such as fashion and computer technology. The wealth of artistic expression reflects that the works in this exhibition were created over a longer time span. Some of these pieces are from the early 80s, others are completely new projects. Retrospective Space, Painting 1980 to 1990. The pictures in this room are from an early phase in Myrvold's career and are ordered chronologically. Many viewers have noticed traces of abstract expressionism in these, particularly in the use of color. The two earliest works in the room exemplify this, Suffragette City from 1980 and Untitled from 81. Both works show strong colors applied to the canvas in wide, sweeping brushstrokes. The color combinations and movement created by brushstrokes make it difficult for our gaze to rest. While this may seem like visual chaos, it also creates a spatial effect. The colors break like waves against each other and stir up agitation. The spatial commotion hampers our ability to sort the various pictorial planes, and it seems like the pictures are vibrating and out of focus. Simultaneous color contrasts disable us from fine-tuning our focus. Although it's fully possible for us to find figurative elements in the painterly cacophony, the tilted, unstable character and dramatic brushstrokes make it difficult to gain an overview of the motif, or to know for sure exactly where figurative elements merge into other elements. In sum, there is a continual interplay between figuration and abstraction. Silver Room, newer works from 2007. Two of the museum's walls are hung with recent paintings. These represent a different side of Myrvold's art than that shown in the adjoining room. These newer works have reduced figuration and stricter compositions, with distinct fields of color and disambiguated contours between forms. The painterly expression is closely linked with tendencies in modernistic painting, but even so, the geometric pictorial language of these works also points to traditions within architecture and design. There are several places we can find abstract arches and other architectural elements. In the late 1980s, Myrvold visited Rome. There she was inspired by the formal syntax of the classical architecture she saw. This inspiration was the impetus for two series, namely Constructions and Timepieces. In these series, she mixed formal elements from antiquity and modernism with postmodern ideas and philosophical concepts. This combination comprises the foundation for her newer works. On the third wall of this room we find quite a different work, The Tower from 2006. This mixed media piece includes painting, photography, plastic, and textiles. Next to it we find 4 digital graphic works entitled Material Connect 1, 2, 3, and 4. In these latter works, nude human bodies make up the central motif. This is just one of many instances where human figuration is a recurring phenomenon in Myrvold's art. The Lars Hertevig Room, New Media Lab. The New Media Lab is especially created for in-Formation. The idea is that visitors themselves can enter into some of the most important pictures Rogaland Art Museum owns, namely works by Lars Hertevig. Visitors can now create their own versions of these famous paintings. The New Media Lab coincides with Myrvold's emphasis on interactive media and on the public as participants in a creative process. The New Media Lab also builds a bridge between Myrvold and the art institution because the Hertevig collection is one of the cornerstones of Rogaland Art Museum's profile. This lab also creates a relation between the artist and the city, and between older and contemporary Stavanger artists. 2001. Interference is the title of a video and performance piece that spreads itself across 4 walls. It consists of 3.5 minutes of film programmed in a loop. Many consider it to be one of Myrvold's primary works. The title suggests several interpretations. For instance, meddling, encroachment, disruption, or collision. This is a complex and technically demanding artwork because the 2 sets of videos have to be 100% synchronized. They are not shown on the same wall but are designed to run synchronically next to other videos. Worth noting is that the pictures are not projected in an even or right-angled way, but are cast onto slanting screens. This video performance spotlights Myrvold's interest in exploring virtual space. The figures are wearing virtual articles of clothing that create effects steered by patterns depicting movement. Virtual reality as a technological phenomenon seriously established itself during the 1990s, and Myrvold was a pioneer in using it in fashion design, video art, and performance. Once again, it's a matter of exploring space, either real or physical, or virtual, as seen here. The persons taking part in interference are dancers, but what we see in the pictures cannot be reckoned as a conventional dance. Sometimes they meet and enter into each other's virtual space, only to disappear shortly thereafter. Along with the continuously mutable background, they lend perpetual variation to the work, almost as if it were a painting to which strokes of paint are forever added. The accompanying music is also composed by Myrvold, and she is responsible for the choreography as well. Fluid identity. The long wall in the largest exhibition room is hung with the pictorial series called Fluid Identity, created between 1982 and 2006. These works represent Myrvold's propensity for so-called mixed media. In other words, these are canvases to which other material elements have been added. The series shows a continuity in the human figuration of her earlier paintings, yet here the figures are mostly made out of clothing. The 4 first works in Fluid Identity, created between 1982 and 84, are partly made with used clothing and textile rubbish. Myrvold has collected this material and integrated it into her pictorial expression. We find, however, far more than paint and textiles in the Fluid Identity series. In the work entitled City Sailor from 1982, the artist has included a Berlin metro timetable. We can also spy a plastic bag filled with shoes, and far up on the left, a plastic bag with spools of thread. Similar devices may be found in several other works. The divergent media are not collected simply for sake of having a breadth of pictorial components. These are also fused into one another. Several places we see paint on the clothing, such that the paint adds many nuances to the material's texture. An example of this is the player from 1982. The figures are readable through the amalgamation, where paint complements textiles and vice versa. In 1984, Myrvold set aside the Fluid Identity series and prioritized other projects, but she returned to it 15 years later. The recent works in the series have a slightly different character because they are created after Pia Myrvold became a well-established fashion designer. This aspect permeates the works. In fact, several are directly related to her fashion collections. Access to new technology has allowed her to mix together an even greater diversity of visual components in these recent works. In Dream Sequence 2 and 3, elements from Myrvold's Cyberkultur collection can be noted. This was an attempt to use computers and interactive media as a means of diverging from traditional clothing design. Dream Sequence 2 and 3 display a wide spectrum of expressive forms melded together into single works. Here we find fashion, film, photography, music, painting, and digital techniques. There are also references to philosophy, architecture, politics, and religion. These appear in the form of quotes from texts printed on the pictorial materials. Famous names are actualized for the public in an alternative context. Names like Le Corbusier, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, and Arthur Rimbaud, just to name a few. In this way, the dream sequences present a microcosmos of precisely that which is characteristic for Myrvold. To wit, the ability to think big, to summarize a multiplicity of ideas, and to embed them in one and the same artwork. Fluid Identity 2000. One of the artworks in this series is itself entitled Fluid Identity. It has loaned its name to the series. The concept of fluid is presented quite concretely, for a steam of fish circulates in a swimming formation on the clothing. Still, the whole title is important for understanding the name of the series, which can be described as a collection of divergent postmodern identities. The series shows how identity can be fluid, transient, and brief, especially within the domain of fashion and other contemporary media. This particular picture captures different moments in time and juxtaposes them with timeless references. It also combines spaces and places of both specific and indeterminate character. The fish pictures are from the Bergen Aquarium. It was there Myrvold worked on a project in the year 2000, when Bergen was a European city of culture. While there, she regularly used the urban environment in works created for that event. In the main exhibition room, we see a large installation showing a number of Myrvold's fashion collections. Items worn by the mannequins are related to scenes shown on the television monitors. Since the mid-90s, fashion has been an important medium for Myrvold, and has almost developed into a separate research project. She aims to explore fashion as a medium for diverse expressions, not only those having to do with clothing, but also other issues like identity, philosophy, and communication. In the collection called Paris Identity from 1994, the clothing concept is based on information technology. These clothes are made out of recycled shopping bags from large department stores, such as Rough Trade, Virgin Megastore, and others. Here we find a mix of plastic logos and textiles. The collection reminds us of an important aspect of urban identity: the commercial armada that fills our houses and streets. The theme from Paris Identity is contiguous with that of later collections dealing with similar topics: modern identity and technology, and reflections on big city life. For the collection called Clothes as Publishing, Myrvold uses clothing as a medium for presenting other things such as drawings, pictures, diagrams, and architecture. Once again, she collaborates with Bernard Tschumi. In the 5th round of this series, she created the project called Fashion Is. 2 interesting contributions from this may be noted. First, fashion is what you read, and second, fashion is the way you dance. The products are concrete in relation to their titles, yet quite absurd in the fashion context. Myrvold has been daring, and this has catapulted her to a trend-setting position. The collection Cyber Couture from 1999 presents the multi-technological nature of Myrvold's creative work. Interactive media and internet allow her to communicate the more conceptual aspects of clothing design, those things that underlie finished products. With the point of departure in absolutely white clothing, the public can themselves influence the design by selecting their preferred printed motifs, size, and colors. Afterwards, each order is sent to a seamstress via email. Producing clothing in this way gives each article a unique individual adaptation. It also saves the artist the expense of overproduction, and as such, this project is ahead of its time as regards environmental conservation and consumption. Since 1999, new editions of Cyber Couture have continued to be produced. The far end of the large exhibition room, there hangs a 3-part video installation entitled Inspirations. This was made in the year 2000. It was created by means of a handheld camera. The 3 screens show the same motif seen from 3 different angles. The pictures are synchronized so that the scenes unfold in real time. In other words, the film is played at the same speed at which the events first happened. This work presents the viewer with a series of contrasts: a nude female body, marching soldiers, and the collective versus the individual. This is one of the leitmotifs running through many of Myrvold's works. Now at the end of our tour, we would like to mention that in-Formation extends into Rogaland Art Museum's main entry hall and auditorium. In the main entry hall, you can experience a video projection on a large canvas, giving a closer view of the data-generated forms in New Media Lab. In the auditorium, you can see various excerpts and documentation from Art Attack's projects throughout the 1980s. In closing, we would like to thank you very much for visiting Rogaland Art Museum and the exhibition In-Formation.